However, the longer and the more deeper problem that Starmer has to face is this. Can he get the UK back into the European Union before the UK itself disintegrates?
The British people are about to vote in the third general election since the fateful Brexit vote in 2016, which was only won marginally by 37% of the electorate voting for Brexit, merely 26% of the population.
Since before Boris Johnson, it's just been a whole mix-up ever since kind of Brexit, really. From there on, the lies for Brexit and what they were going to say they're going to do and what they haven't achieved, and just leaving the Brexit, it's left the country in a bit of a mess anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting to bring up Brexit because, as I said, we're here in North East Somerset. Jacob Rees-Mogg's seat here, he was a staunch Brexiteer. You know, he fell out with people over it. He got elevated to the cabinet through Brexit with Boris Johnson. Are you a Brexiteer yourself?
I was.
You were? Okay.
Yeah.
So you voted for Brexit?
I did vote to leave, yeah.
And how are you feeling now?
Regretted it.
Right.
My parents were very you know, because they're the older generation, were like, you will regret it, and if we do leave, you know, it's going to come down hard.
Your parents will remain?
Yeah.
Right. And so again, just frustration being the main word.
Yeah. And I think most people would. I mean, looking back, I was they made people very naive to it and what was going to happen, and there was no chance that it was ever going to happen.
Yeah. And 8 years later, we're still here, feeling the downsides of that vote from 8 years ago and still unable to grapple with the issues. We have gone into this election with Brexit as the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. Keir Starmer looks likely to be the next Prime Minister. He has ruled out so far rejoining the single market and the customs union, which would be a silver bullet to many of our issues. However, there was a very interesting conversation on Euronews, and I will put a link to the full programme on their channel in the text below, where a sitting MP, a Dutch MP, Thijs Rutten, and former MEP Graham Watson discuss what is ahead for Brexit Britain, led by a Labour government and with a Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
Starmer is being very, very cautious. He doesn't want to upset those who voted for Brexit, who were a majority, albeit a very small one. And one has to hope that if he's elected, as I think he will be, that in reality, in government, he will be rather more open to proposals to come back closer.
Just a quick point on that poll that you mentioned. If we look at who actually wants to rejoin, though, it's still 30-something%. So maybe Labour is actually closer to where the majority of public opinion is. What do you think, Thijs?
Well, I think that he has a clear vision that what has gone wrong in the past more than a decade of destructive Tory government, I would say, that he wants to focus on repairing as much as possible of debt, giving Britain new hope, giving Britain new energy. So I do understand that he says, look, I do not want to spend the first new term in government after so many years of Tory government discussing how to do this again and the referendum. I do think that with some time passing by, there will be another debate. And I think that is the healthy way to do it, to get a thorough debate also among the British public, take some time for that, while at the same time, and I would be very much in favour, exploring the possibilities within the current situation to do more.
And maybe if we can focus on one of those things, I mean, you touched on this, musicians, perhaps seemingly symbolic to some people, but actually part of the broader debate about mobility, which is very important. Graham Watson, do you think there could be some progress made on that at least?
I think it'll be very difficult. I mean, what the UK is wanting is to cherry pick, as it always did in the past. It decided to come out of the single market, out of freedom of movement. As a result, it has to live with the results. And I'm very sorry to say, but it will be almost impossible for UK musicians to tour. I think, however, the longer and the more deeper problem that Starmer has to face is this. Can he get the UK back into the European Union before the UK itself disintegrates? Because the real impact of Brexit is going to be a reunification of Ireland, not necessarily a bad thing, and quite possibly, it's not something I favour, quite possibly the independence of
Labour
Scotland.
voters will be wanting Starmer to go much further on the EU than probably Labour voters south of the border.
Indeed they will, because Scotland had a referendum in 2014 on independence. One of the arguments used by the Unionists was that if they stayed in the UK, they stayed in the European Union. That has proven to be completely false.
You were nodding, Tice, about when Graham was talking about cherry picking. So even if we take, say, this veterinary agreement, which the Labour Party is talking about, does that sound to you like they want to cherry pick a bit, but then say, but we don't want the European Court of Justice to be involved in that?
Well, exactly. But the main issue is that the new Labour government, hopefully soon in office, will have to understand that they will have to come up with a story to the European Union why it is interesting for the European Union. I mean, I want this closer relationship. I am very much in favour of that, but at the moment, the agreement is what it is. There will not be a renegotiation of this agreement. There might be possibilities for special forms of cooperation to lift certain difficulties for trade. But that needs to be attractive also for the EU. The UK has to come with an offer that, that is interesting enough to sit around the table. And then there might be a perspective of doing something together. But indeed, the EU will not go for a la carte situation where the UK can choose what it will join or what it will not join.
So a possible agreement on student exchange, does that raise the question of immigration, which is so difficult for, all political parties?
It does. Immigration remains a political issue in the United Kingdom, as indeed right across the continent. What we've seen is not a reduction in immigration, but a change. Previously, migrant workers came from Eastern Europe. Now they're coming from Southeast Asia. But the number has not reduced at all. And the reason is the economy needs them.
As just about every promise that was made back in the time of Brexit has not been delivered on. These lies that were spread have brought us to this situation. And that is, I think, one of the important things also for the Labour government. Aside of the cooperation with the European Union, they will have to, and they will tell, an honest story to the electorate. Because the lying must stop. The lying of the campaigners pro-Brexit, but also the way that the Tories dealt with the aftermath of it, with I don't know how many prime ministers have gone by. It was not in the interest of Britain, and also not, fairly speaking, not in the interest of the European Union, because we needed to do more other things, working on security together, working on foreign policy, working on the Western Balkans. And we were distracted by internal infighting in Britain.
Speaking of security, there's been talk about maybe the UK joining some kind of security pact. Do you think that's something that could be on the table?
I think it makes eminent sense. And if you look at the response to the war in Ukraine, the UK, together with the Netherlands, very much at the beginning saying, of course we must support Ukraine, of course we must recognise the threat posed by Putin, and of course we must work together. But having left the European Union made that working together much more difficult, much more complicated than it needed to be. And I hope there may be some opportunity to create fora in which we can work together on defence and security issues. It's not, however, in the long term, a substitute for the UK being back in political Europe.
No. But although the official position is that there is no agreement on foreign policy and security cooperation, I do know, and everybody knows, that every day they are sitting together, and I'm glad that they are. And I'm glad that the UK is so involved in our collective efforts for Ukraine.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, do subscribe, and also comment below. Let me know what you think.
Shush!